I guess we could get started with introducing who do we have here today. First of all, we have Kati Sarvela, who's a dentist and a therapist, a real legend with trauma-informed movement in Finland. And then from Australia, the Gold Coast, neuropsychotherapist and educator, Jan Sky. Warm welcome for both of you. Amazing to have you here. So Kati, with you for the past few years, I've got to learn a lot about this trauma-informed movement and all kind of things that I never thought that I would encounter in my life. But now we have Jan Sky from Australia here. How do you two know each other?
Well, I guess it was about 8-9 years ago when I Googled ego state therapy. I studied at that moment hypnotherapy, and I was very interested in ego state therapy. And I found Jan Sky's interesting ideas, and she has written a book about it. And after a couple of years, it was translated to Finnish. Mielisi monet puolet. You have it there probably, Jan. It's in English, many parts of you. So it's a mapping tool for your different ego states or parts. And I had written a book about journaling with your ego states. So creative journaling with your different ego states, and this tool was very, very good for my journaling as a tool. And but now we have both started to work more body-oriented way. So we are still walking on the same paths, I think. What do you think, Jan?
Oh, it was so interesting when we connected more recently. We've stayed in touch over those years, and it was actually 2009 when I first went to Finland, Kati.
Oh, it's so long time ago.
Yes, yeah. And I spoke at an NLP conference. I'm sure it was an NLP conference.
Yeah.
And that's when I had my book there that was just released. And Arpo was in the audience, and he's a Finnish publisher, and so he said he'd like to publish it in Finnish. Would that be okay? Well, of course, I didn't even think twice about it. Of course it was okay. And so then there's the book there in Finnish. But then our connection has maintained, and I've been back to Finland, I think, two more times after that initial one. And it's just amazing, Kati, that we have over the years traveled down the same pathway or the same trajectory, and we are now looking at more brain science information and how the brain informs different mental health disorders or just everyday life disorders. And it's great to be invited here to this cafe. So thank you, everyone.
And now I'm curious to hear your brain smart ideas.
Thank you. Will I start? Will I take over the hosting, Pekka?
Okay. Yeah. So Jan has prepared us a little presentation. So there you go, Jan. You're the host now, so you can take over.
Okay. So here we go. So can everybody see the presentation there? And this is what I'm going to talk to tonight. So I have developed a leadership program powered by neuroscience. And what I'm going to talk to you tonight about, or it's tonight for me. I'm sorry. It's today for you guys, isn't it? It's morning time there for everybody. That's hence the coffee morning. Being a leader in today's, oops, it's not working for me. It's not moving. What's happening? Here we go. So being a leader today, in using only technical skills to cope high demands is no longer enough. Leaders need to use their brain power to improve outcomes while maintaining the well-being of themselves and their team members. In my leadership program, just excuse me because I just want to move you guys across here. So in my leadership program, I talk to leaders who manage teams of people, and we discuss things like managing the challenges of high work demands and constant change. We talk about optimizing your brain function in different contexts, maximizing the capacity to understand and manage your thoughts, behaviors, and your emotions, and how to create an environment for teams to work to their maximum potential. And because of challenging and increasing productivity in a positive, because the challenge, of increasing productivity in a positive and sustainable way in today's complex environment demands a broad range of leadership skills. And that's what my leadership training is all about. But one thing that is for certain in today's environment is the word change. And some of us adjust to change really easily, while others find it a little bit more challenging. We worry about the impact of change and how it will affect them and their team members. And we have, of course, the number one international challenge that we've just all faced, and still a lot of us still involved with. It's the COVID-19. How that has changed the world, our thinking, our behavior is just incredible. So today, for today's presentation, I'm not taking you through a total leadership program, but what I'm going to take you through is just a snapshot of the course, and we're going to be discussing stress and its impact. We're going to look at the autonomic nervous system, right brain to right brain connections, and some ways to maintain a healthy brain and body. So if you're ready, let's go. So here we can see up here on the screen, our little brain there. And if you're a leader, you are aware usually of the impact of stress on your colleagues just by noticing their behaviors. And often that even comes before they're even ready to talk to you about what's going on for them. But let's look here at, oh, I can't move that. There we go. Let's look here at the brain. And I want to talk to you about the brain. And I want to talk to you about the characters that are in the brain that impact and are alive and working when we're in a stressful situation. And the first one I'd want to talk about is the amygdala. Now, I call the amygdala the CEO. It lives in this limbic region of the brain here, the limbic region of the brain. The CEO in Australia is the head of an organisation. If you work in a school organisation, the CEO would be the principal, the head of the school. So a CEO knows about the company, knows about the functionality of the company, doesn't always know about the people that are down the bottom working like crazy just to make things happen. So the alarm goes off for the CEO when someone is stressed, and he or she then talks to the hypothalamus or the general manager, sending messages from the top down. The hypothalamus is like the general manager. In terms of a school, the general manager may be the deputy principal of the school. And then the general manager knows who this frontline manager is, because the frontline manager is the one that knows about the factory floor workers, and that's the pituitary. Then this pituitary sets to work and talks to the factory floor workers. So these are all the people on the baseline that are doing all of the work, keeping the wheels turning on the company. And they are, in fact, the adrenal glands. They sit like little nightcaps or little night hats on top of those kidneys there. So the message comes down from the top here, all the way down to these little guys here saying, come on, work harder, work faster. And that's where we get the HPA axis. So let me just explain to you that what the role of the adrenal glands, their responsibility is to produce adrenaline, which makes us breathe a lot more quickly, our heartbeat, increase our blood pressure, and so we're breathing really, really shallow. And also they're responsible for producing cortisone. And when we get too much of that, and it floods our brain, and we get what we call brain fog. You just can't think. And you hear someone who's stressed saying things like, just don't give me any more information. No, look, I can't cope anymore. Just leave me alone, because they're anxious and they're concerned. And that's this brain fog activity that's going on. Now, there's two really important loops I want to talk about. And the first loop is this stress loop that's obviously created by the function of the HPA axis, which is causing all what I just explained to you. But there's a second loop that goes on in the brain, so it's internal to the brain, and that's called neural looping, and that's from the little guy, the amygdala. And it's through the neural network. So neurons stemming from the amygdala will send signals up to the right prefrontal cortex. And those signals are for a cluster, like a cluster of neurons that go up to the right prefrontal cortex, generally negative. Yeah, in stress, it's usually always negative. And that the term catastrophize is quite common. So someone who's stressed cannot cope with everyday things, and the smallest thing that comes to them that could be, and sometimes they use the example, they took a hammer and hit their thumb. It was sore and it hurt at the time, but by the end of the day, with all of this neural looping going on, they feel like they've got to go to the hospital and have their thumb amputated. So you get the idea, don't you? You know what I'm talking about when I talk about use the word catastrophe. Stress is an interesting thing. We actually need to have stress in our life, but too much stress causes burnout, and not enough stress causes what we call rust out. So we need that nice balance in the middle, the type of stress that just gives us the energy and the motivation to get up each morning and get to work on time, to get through all the tasks we have to do in the course of a day. That's a nice level playing field that we need for stress. But too much, of course, will get these little guys in the limbic region of the brain activated and sending messages down to our adrenals. Now, there's a wonderful woman by the name of Deb Dana, and her book, if I hold the book up here, called The Polyvagal Theory, and I'll send that copy of that to Peko and Catty a little later. Deb talks about And I want to share this with you because it's a fabulous everyday way of looking at the autonomic nervous system. So here we go. The autonomic nervous system, just shown here as a ladder. We can actually go up and down this ladder in the course of any given day. But let's look at the top end of the ladder. This is the ventral vagal activation. And the autonomic nervous system is based around the vagus nerve, which is one of the longest nerves. It's a 10th of the 12 major nerves in the body, coming from the brain stem and running all the way down to the dorsal region, which is located at the base of your spine. Up the top of the ladder, ventral vagal. You're feeling pretty good. You're at ease. You can manage everyday life situations. You're social. You're engaged with your team members, and you're looking at big picture stuff. So it's maybe where you're feeling right now, right there in that ventral vagal activation region, up the top of the ladder. Then you can, in a workplace or in any given situation, at the flick of a finger, drop down to the middle rung. And this is where a lot of stress activity occurs. And it's called sympathetic activation. You're really agitated, you're frantic, you're overwhelmed with everything. You're having a hard time keeping up with even the basics of things that are going on in your life. You feel anxious and irritated, and like the world is just really chaotic and unfriendly. Then you can drop down to what's called dorsal vagal activation. And that's when you're numb, collapsed, and shut down. And in terms of trauma, people who have experienced trauma, this is where they spend a lot of their time. They're buried under a huge load. They can't get out. They feel alone, in a state of despair, and the world is empty, deep, and dark. Now, I want to explain a couple of things in terms of, let's go up to the top of the ladder. In terms of ventral vagal, that in body terms is from your neck and face up, and you will show you the expressions on your face when you're feeling really comfortable and engaged. The sympathetic is more your chest area, so that's like heart, lungs, you know, the rapid heartbeat. This is why what we talked about in the previous slide in relation to stress, that rapid heartbeat and the short breaths that you take there. When you drop down to the bottom, that's collapsed and shut down. Now, when people, and that is is more your way down low, oh gosh, I've forgotten now, but if I can just explain to you, kind of down here below your belly button, that sort of region there. And that's when you don't feel like eating, or if you do eat, you want to throw up. You know, it's just nothing much is going on for you. So we can go up and down this ladder, but once we reach dorsal vagal, that's when we usually stay there for quite a while. And if you are a manager or a leader in a workplace, and one of your team members comes into you and just says, I don't know what's going on. The world's too dark. I can't cope. The natural reaction to that is to want to be a solver, to think of a solution for the problem. But I want to suggest to you that when someone presents to you in that state, you stay there with them and you use right brain to right brain connection, because that's when they need to be heard. They don't need solutions. They just need for you to ask some to ask some questions about themselves. Be curious. Ask, what's going on for you? What can I do for you? Now, you may think, gosh, as a leader in the workplace, I haven't got the time to do that. But it doesn't take much time. And one of the solutions that's a trap that a leader can fall into when somebody presents down here in this state is to say, why don't you go home? Why don't you take the rest of the day off and go home? And that's could be a solution, but it's not one to jump straight into, because a curious question around there could be, is there anyone at home? How would you feel about going home right now? Would that help you at all? Ask these questions. And one of my dear friends who is actually on this tonight, her name is Dawn, she's a specialist on pain management, and she was sharing with me, we actually did a workshop not so long ago together, and she said that one of the people who was her best support when she was way down low in this dorsal vagal area was a physiotherapist who just said to her, what is it that you want, Dawn? And Dawn's response to that was, I just want to die. Now, if you're a leader in a workplace and you heard something like that, it could knock you off your chair. You could feel a little bit shattered at the time. But what she was saying, and if you can just understand from a leader's perspective, Dawn just wanted to be heard. And if one of your colleagues said that, she or he would just want to be heard as well. So then the next question, staying in the curious right brain to right brain activation, is then how can I help? How can I best help? So you're staying in that right brain area, connecting with the other person's right brain area. Be curious, refrain from judging, and reframe your words when speaking to the other person when they are way down deep in dorsal vagal region. I hope in sharing that Deb Dana's ladder with you, and we call it the ANS ladder, which is abbreviated for autonomic nervous system ladder. I hope in sharing that you've been able to, in your own mind, think about times when perhaps you've been down there yourself, or maybe when somebody has presented to you in a way where they were middle of the ladder in that sympathetic activation area, when they've been agitated and angry and not knowing what to do, even maybe even quite aggressive there. So I've shown you a couple of things tonight. I've shown you the stress loop that occurs from the brain going down internally in your body to your adrenal glands, and what happens, how we get the two loops, the neural loop, and we also get the brain-body loop. And in that, when we have that brain-body activation going on, that's when we get tired, we can't sleep, we want to sleep, sleep doesn't come easily to us, we're quite agitated. And then, of course, I talked about the neural looping, which was the negative thoughts that can turn into catastrophe. I shared with you Deb Dana's ladder because I think that is a lovely practical way, and as a therapist myself, I've often shared that with my clients, and they've really understood, and they can see where they are, and they can see how, yes, they've traveled up and down that ladder at times as well. And then from you, from a leader's perspective, I suggest to you to be curious, refrain from judging, and reframe your words. So what are some solutions? We don't want to just stay down there stressed and dorsal vagal. What are some solutions we can have to help us manage this and stay on top of ourselves, and of course, you all know about mindfulness, don't you? Mindfulness isn't necessarily a close your eyes and breathe deeply, although that is an experience of mindfulness. It's just beautiful. But mindfulness can be an active experience. I go for a walk every morning with my dog, and I'm very mindful of what's going on around me. I'm lucky enough to live by water, so we walk along the water, and I notice what boats might be in the water today that they're yesterday. There's one man that lives on his boat, and he's got two little dogs, a little black and a white, and I bet their names are Ebony and Ivory. I haven't actually checked that out. But sometimes he will be in his little tender, putting his dogs in and motoring over to the shore so he can take them for a walk, and then back he goes. It's a beautiful way, and I'm very mindful, and my dog and I will just stop and watch the process going on. That's being mindful. Meditation, of course, is a beautiful thing to do, and it lights up your brain in a different way, and your brain and body work in a collaborative way when you meditate. Exercise, some form of exercise. Some of us love to join a gym. Some of us like to cycle. For me, it's walking. Eating nutritious food, a healthy diet, not the type of food your body wants when you're stressed. Coming to vegetables and fresh foods. Good quality sleep, and I can't impress upon you more the advantage of having a good night's sleep. And good connections, i.e. with your family members, and socially, your networks of friends that extend outside your family. These things and more, and some of the things you may even like to share, are just so important for us to sustain and maintain a healthy lifestyle, so that when we are stressed with things, we're better coped. We have better coping mechanisms to enjoy health and vitality. You may have some questions, and I hope you do. And I just want to say thank you very much, and I hope to meet you again sometime in the future. There are my contact details, but I'm going to end this show, and I'm going to go back to you, everybody who's there. Do I need to give the controls back, Pekko, or are we okay? Does anyone have any questions?
I could ask at least. Could you explain by an example these neural loops? Is CEO is its responsibility to keep the organization stable as he or she is amygdala, or what? Could you explain a little bit more these loops?
About neural loops?
Yes.
Yes. Well, inside our brain, we have many, many pathways, and these pathways are neural pathways. So, I don't have a diagram, but in the nucleus, there's a little neuron, and when we're activated to do something, like for example, right now I'm quite active. I'm moving my hands around, and so there's a firing going on. A neuron will fire electrical currents down the neural pathways, and they activate me at this moment to move and to be active and moving my hands. Now, we're made up of many different behaviors. Our day, our life is made up of a behavior repertoire. When we get up in the morning, we have specific things that we do, and we usually do them in the same order every day. So that is an example of a cluster of neural pathways that are firing to get us out of bed, to take us to the bathroom, to do the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So coming back to your question, Katty, when you asked about stress, there's a lot of neural activity going on in the limbic region of the brain, and particular from the amygdala. The amygdala, I call the amygdala the CEO. The amygdala is responsible for our emotional content, both negative and positive. But in stressful situations, firings that stem from the amygdala region in the limbic region of the brain, from the amygdala in the limbic region of the brain, will fire from the back and up to our right frontal cortex, which is pretty creative. This is the side we mostly function from when we're painting or creating things. But in this case, it's negativity that comes up. So we get a loop of negative thinking, like I'm never going to get out of this situation. Nothing good is ever going to happen to me. Thoughts, behaviors, belief systems are all part of these neural firings. And we know, Katty, from our work with ego states, the state that could be the most executive at that particular time could be my worthless state, or my hopeless state, or my state of helplessness. And that's what keeps me down, keeps me thinking this negativity, and keeps me down in dorsal vagal region.
Okay, thank you.
Have I explained that?
Yeah, now I understand better. Hey, could you give Pekko back the hosting?
Yes, I can. Of course I can.
Thank you.
I need to put these on to see the screen.
So if anybody have any questions, feel free to ask.
There we go.
Thank you, thank you.
Sorry, Pekko.
No problem. I unmuted myself, and then I couldn't unmute myself anymore because I had done the settings so that no one can unmute themselves. But anyways, thank you very much, Jen, for the presentation. It was absolutely fascinating. And as Kati said, now we have about 10 minutes, 12 minutes dedicated for questions. And Kati got started already. So if you who's watching this have any questions, please type them to the chat box, and we will present them to Jan and Kati. But actually, I could start with the questions about that right brain to right brain, right? I found that fascinating, and I was thinking, since you know about how the brain works, how does the right brain to right brain affect basically the brain of the receiver, the one who's in the negative loop, who gets this right brain to right brain treatment, if you will? How does it affect the person with the negative loops in their head?
Well, let me just explain. We know we've got a left and a right cortexes. They actually need each other to function. So there's the left brain predominantly is solution focused, so gets the ideas or the answers, but needs the right brain to create it. But it's just a term, right brain to right brain, because there's more emotional content that's predominant in the right brain. So when I use the term right brain to right brain, what I'm suggesting is that it's my emotional right brain that's connecting with that other person's emotional right brain when they're telling me, I just feel hopeless. And rather than me saying from my left brain, oh no, you're not hopeless, I go, wow, that sounds really sad to me. Is that what you're feeling? So I'm not asking everybody who's a leader in an organization to suddenly become a counselor. What I'm saying is to have a connection from your emotional side of the brain, predominantly emotional side of the brain, to their emotional side of the brain. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Have I answered?
But I'm thinking, when the one comes with their worries to this boss, and the boss gives this compassion, then does it have some sort of immediate effect on the person with the worries and the negative loops?
It certainly does, Pekko, that the other person feels heard. And that's what's important. The other person feels heard.
Okay. And thus, could you say that the positive uphill starts from that point, or perhaps starts? So that's the first step to get feeling better.
Yes, that's right. Because if they're not heard and they're just given a whole lot of solutions, they'll go, I tried that, didn't work.
Yeah.
Once they've felt heard, they feel connected.
Okay. Now I get this. Thank you. So in the chat box there's Minna thanking for the presentation, has no questions, and Dawn commenting that starting to calm you down, this person who's in distress. And actually, now we got the question from Laura. How can the manager keep their own feelings out of it if the manager is really emphatic?
How can the manager keep their own feelings out of it? That's why I said refrain from judgment. I know it's difficult because judgment is something that comes to our mind first of all, and we might be sitting there thinking, oh, this person is always feeling this way. So if you could kind of step back from that and be empathic with the person. I want to just add to that. You don't have to stay there as a leader. You don't have to stay there for a long period of time. The right brain to right brain connection where you show empathy can be quite short. Once they've been heard, then they're more prepared to listen to some of the solutions you might have. I hope I answered that question sufficiently for, who was it who asked?
It was Laura.
Laura.
Yeah, Laura or Laura. In Finland we say Laura.
Oh, your accents are so much more beautiful than the Australian accent.
Actually, Laura wants to ask her question with the mic, so I think that is okay. And Dawn also has been asking, does this also relate to the communication knowledge we have that is 7% words and the rest body language and tone? I'll give Laura permission after this.
Dawn, it does relate to that, of course, because when we are empathic with someone, we tend to change our body language and probably lean a little forward. If we were giving a person a solution, we would sit back and say, well, this is what I believe you should do. So words are just a small amount of that percentage ratio that you're talking about, and body language and then tone of voice come into play when you're doing right brain to right brain connection, which is using empathy. Does that make sense? Yes, so there's certainly a correlation there. Thank you.
Okay. So
and Lara.
Let's okay, here you go.
Hello. Yeah,
Hello.
I thought easier to ask the question with the mic instead of typing. I'm just going to be honest that if I would be a manager, and I'm a very empathic person, so sometimes it's really hard for me if someone comes with their like this kind of situation. I tend to take the other person's feelings. So how can I like listen and be empathic, but not take their feelings as my own?
I think that's a skill that you need to develop, because if I step out of a manager role and I think about myself as a therapist,
Yeah.
I hear a lot of problems that people have been suffering, lots and lots of things, especially with COVID here in Australia, although not as bad as Europe. But what I have to remember at the end of the day, or at the end of talking to that person, is their issues belong to them, not me. So let's go back into a workplace situation, and as a manager, and you're hearing what they're telling you, and you're showing empathy. You're not there to fix their problem. You're there to just listen, i.e. the right brain to right brain connection. And then once they've been heard, you can say, what would you like me to do? Or is there anything that I could do? Or what are you thinking you could do? So any one of those questions.
Okay.
So then that kind of gives it back to them. If you say, what would you like to do? So you're then putting it back into their lap.
Right.
They may just say, I'd like to go home for the day, or the rest of the day. Or in Australia, and I'm sure it's a worldwide thing, we have companies called EAPs, and that stands for Employment Assistance Programs. So a company, it's like an insurance that the company buys, and they buy numbers of hours. So people who work in organisations can ring up a service and talk to a counsellor, and it's totally private and confidential. So if I was a manager in Australia, I'd be saying to them, what I'd really like you to do is ring this number, and give them an EAP number. There's also other services around. In Australia, we call them Lifeline, Beyond Blue, and I know worldwide there are organisations such as that where people can ring helplines. So we don't want to just send the person home from work for the day, knowing that there's no one at home. If they're really that bad, we'd hate for them to stay in dorsal vagal and get to the point where they had suicidal thoughts.
Yeah.
So you need to check a few things.
Okay.
Such as,
Thank
is there
you.
someone at home? I hope I've answered that.
Yes, yes.
All right. Thank you.
Wow, amazing. Thank you, Laura, for the question. I think since we have a guest from the other side of the world, the picture is a flipped.
Yes.
But anyways, we are running out of time. Our world famous 45-minute broadcast time is over. I just wanted to check up with Dawn. Did you have still some questions in your sleeve? No? Okay. So at this point, I want to thank all the participants for checking into this Trauma Cafe. I think this was already the 6th one. I'm getting mixed up with the numbers, but this was for sure a really fascinating one with international guests. And of course, huge thanks to Kati and Jan for doing a great job with the talking and presenting these interesting things for us. So,
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
from
you.
Finland, and I do hope that this Australian-Finnish cooperation will continue. It's interesting.
yeah,
I know it will, Katty, and thank you for inviting me. And Pekka, thank you very much for hosting this evening, today.
Yeah, my pleasure. So for our Australian people, I wish you have a great rest of the day, rest of the evening. And for the Finnish people of us, I hope everyone gets to enjoy the sunny weather that is outside right now and the rest of the day. So thank you everyone, and bye bye.